Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm super excited for today's video, actually. This is something I've wanted to make for quite some time. I wanted it to be one of the first videos I made on this channel, but we're still pretty early on in this channel's existence, so I figured, why not now? So, we're going to be talking about my collection today, collecting in general. This will be quite a long video, so I will leave chapters down below. If you want to skip around, feel free to. I don't blame you. And I apologize now in advance if I start to yap quite a bit. I'm going to try and keep it as short and sweet as possible, but no promises. So if there's anything before you start skipping around that I can say and get my point across, if you get nothing from this video, at least get this. And that's, of course, collect how you want to collect, right? I've been preaching this since day one. There is no right way and there is no wrong way of collecting. Everyone's collection means something to them. That's why it's your own personal collection. It's always going to mean more to you than it will to somebody else. And don't put somebody down because of their collection either. I see that way too often nowadays, where somebody will kind of say, "Oof, I wouldn't collect like that," or "I don't know how or why you would collect like that," right? Phrases like that, which don't let that influence the way that you collect. Don't let that discourage you. I will defend you every time with that, in person or online. There's no need for any of that, and I personally enjoy the more unique collections and enjoy collectors that really like what they do. So that would be the only thing. Like I say, if you're a beginner into collecting, if you've been collecting for as long as I have, for about 8 years now, which is crazy to think about, but or if you haven't collected yet, you haven't started collecting, or you're not sure if you want to collect, keep that in mind going into it. There's no requirements to be a collector, which is kind of the coolest part. You can be anyone, you can work any job, and you can create your own collection. You can have your own personalized thing. So, yeah, that's what I would say. Let's just get that out in the open before we continue here. And the other thing that I'm going to do in this video, or not do in this video, is show any expense, label any prices. Nothing that you see today will be for sale. I'm pretty specific on this because this is my personal collection. I collect to collect. So I'll talk about that here in a second. But none of this is going to be for sale, so I don't feel there's any need for me to value it or to price it. If you want to do that, you can go ahead and do that. Like if you really want to figure out how expensive something is, then be my guest, go for it. But that's not what today's video is about, and that's honestly, in my opinion, not what collecting is about. So let me go into that briefly before we continue here. Let's talk about the 3 types of collectors, in my opinion. Now, I am a collector. Probably could come up with a better name than that, but simply put, I collect to collect, right? Doesn't matter how expensive something is or inexpensive something is. If I want it and feel like it will fit into my collection, then I will do whatever it takes to try and get it, and I will appreciate it for what the card is and for what it is and what it means to me, rather than how expensive it is. So, like I say, I think there's 3 types of collectors in this hobby. And when I say this hobby, I mean, I'm literally talking about Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, sports. I've seen and done pretty much all of it, and it's across the board pretty much the same. I don't mind the first two types of collectors. So of course that would be the first one, and the second type of collector is a collector investor. I think that would be the best way of putting it. People who collect to invest, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I really don't think there's anything wrong with that. I actually kind of do that myself with my sealed stuff. I won't be showing any of my sealed collection today. Not that it's that big anyway in the first place, to be honest with you. But I will show you 2 packs that I just found while I was gathering all my cards. And I think those are pretty cool and worth showing at least. So I will show you that. But that's it. But yeah, collector investors are... it's pretty obvious. They collect to invest. So future, they buy a card for like $25 and they hope that eventually it'll be $100 later on down the road when when it's time to sell. And like I say, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think it hurts the community. Honestly, if you invest into something, generally that means it's going to have longevity. It means that it's going to be popular longer. So I don't really think that's a bad thing. But the third type of collector that I absolutely cannot stand, and I see a lot more now than I ever did when I first started, is a person who collects for clout, and that's it. it's very obvious. Like, it's very obvious to tell who it is and how they do it. Just ask them a couple questions about the card that they have themselves, and if all they talk about is the price of it or how expensive it is, it probably doesn't matter what type of card it is, right? I've done that so many times where I've just been like, oh, so, you know, do you like the artwork? Like, what makes it so cool? What makes it so special to you? Well, that's 50 grand. I mean, it speaks for itself. It's a 50 grand card. It's obviously expensive. It's obviously popular. Okay, but, like, what do you like about it? Because to me, it seems like you could get any expensive card and just collect the expensive ones, and that's gonna garnish you more likes because it's generally more popular and more expensive. You know, I get it. Like, I don't think it's a good thing. I really don't think it's a good thing for the community, because that's not really what it's about, and not everyone can afford that, right? So I don't think you need to collect super expensive cards just to farm likes and farm views. I think, unfortunately, it was kind of obvious that it was going to go down this direction, to be honest, just the hobby in general. I think everything social media in general is kind of this, you know, it's really trying to farm likes, farm views. Actually, the more controversial you are, probably the better off you're going to get. You're not going to get ostracized like you probably did 8-10 years ago. You're actually going to get more likes, you're going to get more dislikes, you're going to get more comments, you're going to get hate watchers. You're actually going to get more publicity if you do something really stupid. And there's a lot of trends that are honestly very stupid and do not belong in this hobby. And I know people wouldn't have stand for it back when I started collecting in 2016. The most notable one and recent one is probably cutting base set cards in half. That was a tough one to say. You know who I'm talking about, and you know probably what the video is. But my God, that is the worst trend I think I've ever seen. It does nothing but hurt the community. I mean, if you've been in this and you collect to collect like me, that's like the last thing you ever want to see, is someone cutting any cards. I mean, when I grew up, I actually didn't get to open a lot of cards as a kid. That's why I really enjoy opening packs. That's why I do pack opening videos. I really don't care what I pull. Would it be great if we pulled something crazy? Yeah, of course it would be. But I didn't get to open a lot of cards as a kid, so when I open them now, just opening them themselves is what makes it really fun for me. So that's just kind of my take on that. There's a couple things like that, so don't be that guy. Don't be that type of collector that just gets expensive cards just to make themselves look better, or to farm views, or whatever the case be, right? So that's kind of my take on the collectors. There's actually a story that I want to say before I dive into my collection. I know I'm rambling a bit here, but I think it's important. It kind of backs up my first point of collecting how you want to collect. And it's actually not, I didn't witness this. My buddy witnessed it, well, told me about this story, and I think it's worth mentioning. If somehow the guy who I'm talking about watches this video, or you know the guy I'm talking about, like, please let me know. Like, I want to get in contact with him. I really want to see his collection, because I just think it's really unique and cool. That's how I responded, at least, to this story. I unfortunately didn't like how a lot of people responded to this story when I've told it outside of this video. But yeah, basically my buddy was at one of his local card shops. It's over by where he used to work, and he was on his lunch break, and he sort of went in and was looking through some cards, and then these two guys walked in. They had hard hats on, they had the visors on. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that they were probably working in construction, right? And that's kind of brings me back to my point, where you can do whatever you want. Like, you can work in whatever job, and collectors are all sorts and all types, right? But my buddy was intrigued. I mean, most of the time at local card shops, you're going to have that sort of experience where people ask, what do you collect, and what do you like, and what are you looking for, things like that. If you're looking through a binder, it's always nice to help someone if you run into what they're looking for, right? So my buddy was asking them, hey, what do you collect, things like that. And I can't remember what the other guy said. I think the first guy, he either didn't collect and he was just hanging around with his friend, or what he collected, he couldn't find anything that day, right? And I think they were from South Carolina, I want to say. I don't want to dox them, but I think they were from South Carolina, and they were visiting, or they weren't visiting. They had a construction job here in Tennessee, and so my buddy sort of asked that question, like, okay, so what do you collect, all that type of stuff, and the other guy said, well, my hobby outside of collecting cards and obviously like working is fishing. Like, I'm a big fisherman. Now, I don't know if that means he's a pro. Like, I don't know if he's on the tour, you know, reeling in the largemouth bass. Yeah, I don't know if he's just a good old southern boy that likes to fish on the weekends. I don't know. But he's a fisherman. That's his hobby. So he literally straight up said, I collect all the fish Pokemon. That's all I collect. Just the fish Pokemon. And my friend kind of did the meme of, like, you know, that double take look, and was like, okay, I've not heard that before. So, you know, then started asking questions like, okay, so anything to do with fish? Like, would obviously Magikarp counts, right? He's like, yeah, Magikarp counts. He's like, okay, what about like Gyarados? He's like, no, I don't think I could catch that with my fishing rod. So he basically said, it has to be something that I can catch, that I feel like I would be able to catch in real life with my fishing rod. And or anything to do with Fisherman. So I think his chase card at the time was the golden fishing rod, right? Which is a crazy chase card, right? I've never heard anyone else say that, right? In the 8 years of me doing this, so it's very unique. I actually really enjoyed that story and was like, I want to see what his collection looks like. I mean, I think that's so unique. I've not come across that in, like I say, all my time doing this. And so, yeah, I actually went on like a 45-minute to an hour just like deep dive of, so would this count? Would that count? Because he says, oh, anything with Fisherman. Well, I'm going to show you a card in my collection later on here of the Gyarados with the Fisherman in the artwork, right? So I'm like, well, that would count, right? Because there's an actual Fisherman. I can't remember if he's actually trying to catch the Gyarados or if the Gyarados is going overhead as he's catching a fish. But that should surely count, right? And it's like, oh, maybe it is, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. And then, like, you've got, like, the Lugia V alternate art from Silver Tempest, right? That has a fisherman in the background, right? Obviously, Lugia, you can't catch Lugia on a fishing rod, but there's a fisherman in the background, so would that count? I don't know, you know? Would Sharpedo count, right? It's a shark. Technically, if you're fishing on the ocean, you know, they catch sharks all the time. They don't necessarily want to keep them, they cut the line, but, you know, it's just an interesting thing, and I just kept going back and forth, like, oh, you think that would count? You're like, what? So I just can't imagine, like, walking into his room. Do you pass, like, one of those, like, on the shelf he's got one of those, like, bass, that, like, those little fake on the plaque thing, and you pass the center and it comes out and starts singing, like, the Beach Boys to you, right? Like, does he have one of those, and then it's just, like, binders full of just fish Pokemon, and that's it? Like, I don't know, I think that would be cool. Like, again, that's how I reacted to it. I've told this story to quite a lot of people, like vendors at shows or like other collectors. And unfortunately, every time I kind of tell that story, I always get, well, that's weird. Like, really, just like fish Pokemon? Like, there's no value in that. Like, why would you ever collect that? Like, that's the type of attitude I would get from that. And that's, like, I hate that. Like, I mean, that is the most unique collection I've ever seen in my life, right, up to this point. Don't get me wrong, like, if you collect modern day stuff, if you collect, like, the alternate arts, that's all great, and I agree how cool it looks, but you and, like, 4,000 other people are doing the same exact thing, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not as unique as this, right? And so, to me, I really was like, that's pretty cool. And that's how I react as a collector. I respect that guy's collection. Even though I've never met him, I've never seen what his collection actually looks like. It could just be a bunch of fishing rods in a binder. But that's pretty cool to me, because again, I've not seen that. Now, as far as I know, he doesn't have an Instagram. He doesn't post his collection anywhere. He doesn't talk about it. So it is purely for him, and it's his personal collection, and that's what he cares about, and that's his hobby, and that's how he does it. So that's the type of stuff I salute to. That's the type of stuff that makes this hobby so much fun to be a part of, and this community. You'll find that people collect certain cards that you would never think anybody would actually collect, but there's always something for somebody out there. So keep that in mind when you go into this hobby, whether you're new, like I say, or whether you've been in it for a while. Just keep those things in mind. Like, what you say can be kind of, you know, like, I was saying this to these, I did it as like a social experiment. Like, I just asked these questions and just kind of gauge and get responses back, and I'm not going to quote anybody, you know, I'm not going to, you know, call people out on it directly, but it's just like, come on, man, that's not cool. Like that guy's got a cool little unique collection. Like, why can't we, why can't we like celebrate that rather than put it down, right? But anyway, that's just kind of my story, kind of summing up my whole point of collecting how you want to collect. And speaking of that, let's talk about how I collect, right? So you can kind of see right here, the fourth way, or my fourth most favorite way, let's just put it like that, right, is graded cards, right? So some people might be surprised with that. Grading cards or graded cards is very popular nowadays. But to be completely honest with you, when I was a kid, they didn't exist, right? So because they didn't exist when I was a kid, I really have zero nostalgic ties to them. I'm not as connected to a graded card as I am with a raw card. It doesn't mean that I can't appreciate it, and I understand why a lot of people collect them, especially in the sports industry or in the sports hobby. I think out of all the hobbies, that is probably where graded cards are the most prevalent and make the most sense, to be honest. They kind of did it to themselves. As soon as you start serializing cards, making one-of-ones or, X amount out of 50 or 25 or whatever, right? You're sort of coaxing yourself to make that person grade the card, right? If it's a one-of-one, well, you got a one-of-one, it's one of a kind. Now you have to go see if it gets a PSA 10, because then it's not only one of a kind, but it's in perfect condition. And you'll find somebody that collects that player or likes that team, and then that'll be their grail card, right? So I actually get it and understand it more from a sports perspective, and I've actually recently started collecting more sports cards than I ever used to. As you can tell, I'm a big Forest fan, Nottingham Forest fan. Proper football. I do like American football, don't get me wrong. It's probably my second favorite sport to watch, and but I'm not invested enough in it to actually start collecting American sports cards. But I get it. I understand why people do it, and I'll probably start doing the same with Forest players. And of course, probably England players, because if you're born in England, then you're an automatic England fan, even though you really don't want to be because of how crap they play most of the time, especially this Euros. And you can really only have two teams, right? It's England and then whatever club you support, and that for me is Nottingham Forest. So I'm not declined, or I'm definitely inclined to collect some graded sports cards and graded autographs and one-of-one Forest players. That stuff does appeal to me, so I probably will do that. For Yu-Gi-Oh, I tend to just stick to my favorite artworks when it comes to graded cards. I really don't have that many. They're expensive. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh graded cards are very expensive, and graded cards in general are very expensive. That's why I've kind of had to change how I collect my graded cards. So I originally set out to get my top 10 favorite Pokemon and get every artwork that ever existed for my top 10 favorite Pokemon. And I only wanted PSA 10s. I'm okay with a black label, like a BGS as well, or a gold label, or 9s, like 9s or 10s. That's all I wanted. And really, I only want a 9 to have it, and then that's kind of a suggestion if you're collecting on a budget. Get an 8 or a 7 or a 9, and then cash that in or trade it up one day to try and get your 10, right? If you see a 10, and maybe just give them $100 or whatever the difference is. It just makes it a little bit cheaper than just spending $700 off the rip on a PSA 10 card, because that's just like realistically what it is when it comes to graded cards. They're extremely expensive. So I had to kind of dial that back a bit, because realistically I'm just not going to be able to get every single artwork in PSA 10 of all my favorite cards. So I've just kind of changed it to just my favorite artworks. And obviously, because my favorite artworks will probably also be my favorite Pokemon, it kind of hasn't changed too much. I'll kind of show you some examples later on when we actually go over the cards, but that's kind of the premise when it comes to that for me with graded cards. And I've just never been a big fan in general of like collecting sets with graded cards. I think binders just complement raw cards in a set. They just complement them much better, which you'll see, because that's another way of how I collect. Spoiler. But I get it. Like I say, graded cards are very popular. They do tend to be on the more expensive side. So when I was saying that people collect cards for clout, you tend to see it more so in graded cards than in raw cards. But again, like I say, that's fine. It's neither here or there. So that's the fourth way. My fourth most favorite way that I collect. And then the third way that I like to collect is my favorite artworks. So you can kind of see a trend here, but I've kind of always done this. It's only just now where I've started to actually put them in a binder. But I've always, if I'm at a card shop or if I'm at a vendor, at a show, or just in general, if I pull something out of a pack, if I like the look of it, I will keep it. If I like the artwork, I'll keep it. And now I'm going to put them all together in a binder. So it doesn't matter if it's 25 cents, like I've said before, or if it's like a $20 or $30 card. If I really, really enjoy the artwork, I want to put it all in one binder and just have that be my artwork binder, if you will. And like I say, I'll show you that here in a bit. And then it's kind of a tie for first, to be honest. These two kind of go back and forth a bit of which one I prefer. One of them is brand new, so I'm going to say that that's first, but I guess my second most favorite way of collecting is sets, of course, right? I really enjoy set collection, and I do it in a sort of unique way, and I'll get into that when we actually, when I show you some of my binders. I think I've got about 10, 11 binders I'm going to show you today, so quite a lot. But yeah, I love collecting sets, and I think doing it, like I've said before, in a binder just complements it a bit more. A lot of people have different definitions of what a master set is, and I'm going to go into that detail when I actually show you. I think it's just easier for me to show you than it is to just explain it first, so we'll get into that when I show you some of my binders. And currently my most favorite way of collecting is something that I just started very recently, and I actually really enjoy it. So it's kind of a two-parter, but basically I now collect my favorite evolutionary lines. I won't spoil who it is. This is, of course, when it comes to Pokemon. But I'm trying to collect every artwork of all my favorite evolutionary lines, right? So that will be hard, don't get me wrong. But that's kind of a theme. That's kind of what I like to do with my collections. I'll kind of talk about it a little more in detail when we get there. But I actually try to make it as hard as possible, and I'll give you kind of a good analogy of why I do that as well. But yeah, so I'm gonna try and collect basically my favorite evolutionary lines and all the cards that they have, and then slight pivot to that is basically there was a couple cards. I think it's like, I want to say it's like 8 different types of Pokemon. And I just think they have some of the most underrated artworks of all time. I very rarely see them posted on social media. I very rarely see them hyped up at all. And it was like one of each of that Pokemon. And I was like, okay, if that artwork is that good and it's underrated, I'm sure that they have so many other good ones from that specific Pokemon. So what I've basically done is picked like, I think it's 8. I can't remember. Well, I'll show when we get there. We'll figure it out. But it's about 8 Pokemon, and I just think I'm gonna try and collect every single artwork that has ever been printed of them. So some pretty interesting stuff, and that's kind of been the way I collect, the 4 different ways. So I guess without further ado, I've been yapping for way too long now. Let's go ahead and show you some cards. Right, let's get into it. So we have quite a lot we're going to be going over today. We've got 11 binders in total, mainly going to be Pokemon, but we have at least 1 binder of Yu-Gi-Oh! And a small little binder of the sports cards. So those are kind of been newer into my collection, but we've got some single cards that we're going to go over as well. Graded, all my graded cards that I have, of course. And in that tin on the top right, I believe we have cards that I was going to get graded, or I will get graded eventually. Some of them may not be worth getting graded anymore, but we'll go over that when we get there. We've got a couple of loose packs on the left-hand side that might be interesting too, but I'm not going to get too much into my sealed collection. We'll start with the graded cards. We start with my beautiful Giovanni's Gyarados first edition from Gym Challenge. Easily one of my favorite artworks for Gyarados of all time. So we're super happy to be able to get him in a PSA 10. Perfect condition, and first edition especially as well. And then we've got Misty's Gyarados as well. You may have seen these in the backgrounds of some of my videos, so these are the ones, of course, that are some of my favorite. And that's kind of how I like to do my graded cards, to be honest. I think, you know, you can only have so many, and I think it's better to sort of rotate them from a display perspective. I do enjoy how graded cards can be displayed. So obviously in the background, you can kind of see they're kind of blank right now, but I usually put 3 in the back of all my videos, and I kind of enjoy that, the way that it's sort of displayed in the background. And of course, behind me, when I'm, you know, on my computer or in another room, I do enjoy having at least like 5 or 6 out on display. But otherwise, you know, I think they're usually just sort of locked into a box, and you kind of look at them like they're vinyl records or like comic books, right? You don't really have them, you can't really display too many at once without it getting sort of jumbled. So that's why I prefer binders. That's why I prefer raw cards. But like I say, a lot of these graded cards are still pretty cool, and I enjoy the way that you can show them off. And that's why I'm trying to now sort of, I've changed my direction of how I collect my graded cards. I'm definitely going to be trying to get my favorite artworks. So what we just saw there was Giovanni's Machamp, which is one of my favorites, and then that Black Star promo Machamp, which I think is one of my favorites within that set. And then this is a reverse foil from Expedition, PSA 9. So that's something that I also recommend if you're balling on a budget and you're wanting to try and get some expensive cards. Start with 8s, starts with 9s, get 7s, you know, do whatever just to get the card. And then if you run across a 10 when you're at a show or at a card shop, see if you can trade it in, you know, see if you can use the value of what you have there to go towards the 10, and then you may not have to spend as much out of pocket from a cash perspective. And generally vendors will like that because, you know, you're giving them another piece of inventory. It's not as if, you know, you're buying them out, which I know that they don't mind that, but you're not only making a sale, giving them cash, but you're also providing them with a card they can potentially sell, you know, 10-15 minutes after you've done the deal with them. So that's what I'd recommend you do. We've got a pretty cool little 2017 Sun and Moon Japanese Machamp here. I just like the artwork on that one. I mean, I know it's nothing too crazy. So with a lot of these, I've actually, in the past year, I went through all the graded cards I've ever had, and these are the ones that have sort of made the cut. I'm actually selling quite a lot of, well, not quite a lot, but a lot of the ones where I just feel like I'd rather just have it raw. You know, I'd rather just have it in a binder than it be graded, just because I think there are better artworks for those particular Pokemon. So I've got some of those listed on my website if you're interested in any of these. Obviously, like I say, I was trying at one point to get my top 10 favorite Pokemon and just get them all in like PSA 10s and all the artworks, which is just unrealistic. But it will turn out that a lot of the artworks I do enjoy come from my top 10 favorite Pokemon, so we'll still see a lot of those. So far, if you're astute, you can tell that Poliwrath, Machamp, Gyarados, these are some of my favorite Pokemon of all time. And we get to a very nice Tyranitar next. So this is Pokemon Expedition. This is probably arguably one of my favorite Tyranitar artworks. The only thing, and this is a great example when I talk about trading up or, you know, trying to find a better version of this card. So this is obviously the non-holo, and the next card I'm going to show is a non-holo as well. These are the only two Tyranitars I have in my collection, but they have holo versions of both of these artworks. And so if I want to try and collect the best, you know, artwork, technically I should probably get the holo. It would just look better in a slab, in my opinion. Not that the non-holos don't look cool, because it's still the same artwork, but this could be something, for example, where I might trade both of these for just a PSA 10 Expedition or Aquapolis, depending on which two I can find, or which one I can find, and get it in a 10. And but I mean, the value of that, I don't know what it is, so I may not be able to actually, you know, do something like that. But that is kind of, and this Gengar is the same way. I think there's a holo version of this. So trying to trade up for that would be kind of cool. And I just think that would maybe look a bit better in the slab, having it be a holo rather than a non-holo. But still, regardless, pretty cool artwork. This next one is, yeah, this is probably one of my favorite, actually my favorite Gengar artworks. And it's kind of surprising coming from like Legend Maker 2006 set. But I actually really like this one. I really like the holo bleed on the back. So even though this is a 9, I'd probably just keep this regardless. I mean, if I saw a 10, then you know, depending on how much it is, then of course I would try and get it or exchange this for that, and you know, maybe just pay a couple extra dollars. But yeah, that would be kind of where I would maybe look to that. Otherwise, I'd probably keep it. This is one of my favorite little Typhlosions. This is very you know, a nostalgic card for me. I really like the Hollow Bleed, and it's got a nice swirl on the top right corner there. But these promo cards were really hard to get in 10s, so that can be a thing as well. You may be limited to getting a 10 because there isn't a 10 doesn't exist, or maybe 9 is the best grade you can get. Or if, especially with the old school promo cards, it's just hard to get 10s in them. So they're going to be much more, a lot more expensive. Giovanni's Nidoking, easily one of my favorite Nidoking cards as well. And it's in pretty good nick, to be honest. So a lot of Gym Challenge there, just because I really do enjoy that set, and I enjoy a lot of my top 10 favorite Pokemon are within that set as well. This was a cool one. I really like this Alakazam. It's kind of more of a random artwork. Most people maybe haven't seen this card, but it's from the 2008 set. It's a Japanese set, and it's sort of like, it's almost like a reprint of the Gym Challenge, you know, in that sense. Like, it's bringing back the gym leaders and their Pokemon. So Alakazam is definitely up there. And last but not least, we've got a nice little, well, not last but not least, but we've got a nice little Squirtle card here. He technically doesn't make it into my top 10 favorite Pokemon of all time, but I just really like this artwork, and that's kind of going to be where I change, like I say, with how I collect my graded cards. I'm just going for really cool artworks. Dark Blastoise is one of my favorites. Blastoise is my favorite Pokemon of all time, so I think this is easily one of his best artworks he's ever had, and I really do enjoy this one. Just a really cool looking card, to be honest with you, and it's a 9, so it's not perfect, but you know, it's going to be hard to try and find a 10 of that as well. So you've got to get what you can get. This was a promo card. Like I say, promo cards are usually pretty hard to grade as 10s, just because of how they are, you know, how you get it, how you receive it. Usually they're all pretty beat up, and to be honest, it looks a bit off-centered off the rip, but it's you know, really not as bad, I guess. That's the other thing I think about graded cards that I'm not necessarily a fan of. It's all opinion based, you know, in terms of how they grade the card. If they feel on a certain day, if they're having a bad day, then everything's an 8, right? But if they're having a good day, then maybe those 8s become 9s, or those 9s become 10s. So because it's so subjective, it's kind of hard for me to really enjoy graded cards as well. But I really like this Piplup and Blastoise card. Out of the modern day cards, this is probably one of my favorite. With Blastoise, I really like the tag teams. So yeah, that's pretty cool, and I think that is the end of all my graded cards. So nothing too crazy. I mean, that's 8 years worth of collecting graded cards, and well, like I say, I've definitely done some cuts and changed how I collect a lot of these. So but those are the ones that made the cut. Like I say, moving forward, I'm going to just try and collect my favorite artworks. And I think we'll go ahead and go into... I've only got like a couple graded Yu-Gi-Oh cards. There's one Yu-Gi-Oh card I'm not going to show today because I'm going to make a separate video about that. A little bit of a spoiler there. I don't want to spoil anything, actually. I don't want to give any hints to it, but it is a Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's probably the rarest card in my collection, but I'm not going to show that today, just because I'm going to make an entirely separate video on that here probably soon, hopefully by the end of this year. So I actually really like this card. These are the Expert Rule cards. I just think I'm going to try and get all 6 of them, to be honest. I've got 2 of these in 8 right now, but I just think they're really unique. Like, these aren't artworks that I see too often. Obviously, they're not even actual... Like, of course, they're Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but they're not actual, you know, monsters or anything like that. They're not even necessarily playable cards. They're just sort of rule cards. They just kind of tell you what the rules are. Now, I don't speak Japanese or read Japanese, but I'm assuming it's explaining it's explaining how you play the game. But yeah, it's very cool. I really like those 2, especially the one with the Pegasus on it. And this was just a Guardian Growl I got years ago. I actually just really liked that monster and him in the anime, and kind of how, you know, and I actually quite like the artwork on this one. So, and it's probably not one of those where it's even worth selling at this point. It's obviously not an expensive card, but one that means a lot more to me than just whatever it is, like 15-20 bucks that it's probably worth now. But again, that doesn't matter to me. And I was at one point thinking of collecting all the 007 cards, like all the seventh cards in all the sets, but I don't know. We'll see. we can't keep changing everything back and forth. My collection's already got enough ADHD as it is. So, but yeah, I really like those cards. Like I say, my rarest card is actually a Yu-Gi-Oh card in my collection, but I'm not going to show that today. That'll be for a different day, and I'll make a whole separate video of it because it's a very historic card as well. So let's go ahead and look at the ones that I was originally going to get graded. Some of these may not even be worth getting graded anymore, and I may just hold on to them. But these are kind of just the one while we're here. I'll just kind of show these off. So a lot of these are going to be Charizards. Got a nice Charizard, Chonky Zard there, VMAX. So these are all the ones I think could get 10s, right? I'm not going to show the backs of all of them, but I just think that these are the best possible chances of getting 10s. I think the Charizards are probably still definitely worth getting graded, but a lot of these are, I pulled them at the time and they were the chase card of that set, but probably not worth it anymore. A lot of the rainbow cards, like we're coming up to this God of War, like they're not going to reprint those anymore, so I think it might just be best to hold onto it rather than get it graded. But a very nice Chaos Emperor there. This Karibo actually looks quite nice. It's a first edition MRD Karibo. I would probably say it would probably get about an 8, but that's still probably worth grading. I pulled this Trevor Lawrence a while ago. Not sure if that's worth grading anymore. This is a first edition Ninetales French. So my buddy and I opened up some French base set packs back in the day, and so any of those are probably, that's the best chance you're going to get at getting a 10. So all of these count as well. These are the first edition French base set cards that we pulled. So I would imagine, no hope, that all of these would get 10s, but you never know, I guess. So I've kind of put those aside just in case to see if I may take that Nidoran out, actually. I may put that in a binder. And the Grookey on the ball, the Eevee on the ball, those were the Futsal exclusive cards. They're pretty cool cards, to be honest, but I'm not like a huge Eevee fan or a huge Grookey fan. It's not like I obsess over those two like a lot of other people do. But those were the Futsal exclusive ones, like I say. So those, you had to buy something from like the GameStop in England to be able to get them. So they're pretty exclusive, probably still worth grading. Let's have a look at the two little packs I have here. Like I say, nothing too crazy with my sealed stuff, but this is one of the French base set first edition packs that I was talking about earlier that I had opened. I think we opened 3 in total. It was this was the height of when Pokemon was coming back, and we saw them in like a corner shop, and we were like, "There's no way, there's a base set, right?" And it ended up being French. We thought they were English at first, but that's okay. This is a Sun and Moon Burning Shadows. It's just the artwork on this pack is off-centered, so it's nothing crazy. I don't think there's anything. It's not like the cards inside have to be off-centered, but it's extremely off-centered pack. So just something kind of interesting there. Nothing too crazy, but just two of the packs that I have there. Now let's get into some of my Yu-Gi-Oh singles that I have. I originally wanted to grade these first two, but it's probably not worth grading. Just like I say, these are just some of my favorite cards within Yu-Gi-Oh. So a lot of these, like this, for example, you can tell that that's probably a childhood card, right? A lot of these are my childhood cards, so they've had to survive in very extreme, harsh conditions. So if you see anything with an E on it, especially like that Blue Eyes, geez, it's obviously because I grew up in Europe, so that was, a lot of those are European cards. And if it's not an E, then I either got it when I was in America early on as a kid, or I managed to trade somebody for the American print for it. So we got the 3 Blue Eyes, we got the Red Eyes, we got Blue Eyes Shining Dragon, and Buster Blader, which is my favorite card of all time. And this card has an insane amount of history, actually. It's a not a long story, but it's a pretty meaningful one. I might make a separate video on that as well, just because it is my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh card of all time, and that card, in particular, has quite a lot of history tied to it. And that's the cool thing about cards, man. And that's why I do this. That card alone has more history than any of the cards that I'm probably going to show in all my binders. It just has a whole story to it and everything else. So, but like I say, I'll probably make a separate video on that. So let's go through some of the Pokemon singles I found that haven't quite found a home yet in the binder, that I think these are all kind of worth keeping. Like Shiny Lugias and Umbreon and Espeon. These should be all the amazing rares. Like, I actually quite like those. I didn't mind the amazing rares, but I think there's like 3 more of those that I need. But those are all the ones from Vivid Voltage. This Kingdra EX is from my childhood. I got another Eevee on the ball. We've got some Neo Genesis cards here, so a nice Asmodee and the Electric Giraffe. We've got the Feraligatr. These are the promo cards. There's the Typhlosion Premium File Edition, and then the Meganium. And then these three on the end should just be quite random. I just thought I'd show these off. This was a very nice Hulk, and these are two custom-made card little waifus here. So we've got Nami and Misty, and my buddy of mine actually gave me those quite recently. So they have made it to the collection. Congratulations, Matt. So that is all of the singles, the graded cards. We're going to move on to the binders now. And what I will say is I kind of struggled recording this. Like, when I was doing it, I was trying to do a top-down, because binders are sometimes hard to get across from a video. But I was just getting flashbanged by the ring light every time. So I'm no surgeon, so be warned that if the camera starts to get a bit shaky, I am recording this with one hand in the camera. So we're going to start off with my forest cards. This is very new, like I say. These are all just the cards that I've pulled recently in the past year or so. I'm a big Forest fan, and of course a big England fan as well, so I just thought I'd put some of the Euro cards that I got in my last video in here, and some of the legends of the game. But that's pretty much it. Only just a couple pages worth. These are some of the ex-Forest players that you know, used to play for us that I really rated. A lot of these guys, and nice little Mukhtar there from Nashville FC, oh SC, sorry. So yeah, so that's it for the sports. Nothing too crazy, like I say. I'm just starting with that. And then let's go ahead and get into my Yu-Gi-Oh binder. I really liked the Mago set. This is the Maximum Gold, I think that's what it was called. I actually quite liked this gold set. So I was originally going to collect this full set, which I could probably do now. Ironically, all of those those are all the alternate arts, and I actually just need the regular cards. So I could probably go through and finish that set if I wanted to, but it wasn't really high on my priority list. So you can tell that I kind of started this based on whatever I pulled, because I opened quite a lot of Maximum Gold, because at the time, you know, the Blue Eyes in that set was worth quite not a lot, but it was worth opening the set for. And then I actually quite liked the set, so I kind of fell in love with it and was going to try and complete the whole thing. But again, I'll probably just buy singles for that to finish that later on. And then now we're going to get into a lot of my vintage stuff. So these are the ones that made it to the binder that weren't in the singles like I showed before. So usually when I go to, some of these are still from my childhood too, don't get me wrong, but a lot of these are some of the ones that I found in a local card shop that, you know, I got for a pretty decent price. But I really liked the Ojamas as a kid. I don't know, I used to run that all the time. That combo that you just saw there with the king and the three regular ones and that magic card, I used to have that in all my decks. I really liked the Ra Disciples into the Winged Dragon of Ra here. I think he was one of my, at one time he was probably one of my favorite god cards. So eventually I'd probably get all three of those. That would be kind of a cool thing in the set. So a lot of these artworks, like especially these are from that Battle Legend of Armageddon. I really enjoyed the artworks on all the dragons, or the 5 dragons that were in that set. Of course, I got the Chaos Emperor as well, but that was one that I thought might be worth grading. We've all seen the Sphinxes. That's from the movie. So I know those are kind of commonplace now and, you know, don't really hold any value, but I actually really like them. That's like pure nostalgia for me. We've got some Dark Holes, some classic cards here. A lot of these are the European prints, so you can tell that these are from my childhood, and they're kind of beat up, a lot of them. Giant Rat. You know, some of these are just like classics for me. I know they're not too crazy. Some nice Graceful Charities here as well, from Pegasus deck. But these are like really nostalgic for me. I used to run these all the time as a kid in all my decks. I actually quite like the Jack's Knight, that's all, you know, obviously Yugi stuff. And this Beast of Talwar, this is probably my favorite and kind of a hint at showing you how I collect. It's, you know, you've got the first edition, the Unlimited, and then the Japanese print. So that's kind of a hint coming up when I talk about my set collections and how I do it. I really liked Mega Cyber. These tokens, I really enjoy, like Duelist Kingdom token is so cool to me. Because it's truly from the anime. And then we've got some more cards here. So King of D. A lot of these I really enjoy the artworks for. Obviously Chain Destruction's a pretty popular card too. I really like the Exod, and Time Escaper, Assault Wyvern. Like these are all just like cool artworks to me. Amazon Paladin. I think this is from one of the newer sets, the Scapegoat, but I think I had the original beforehand. This is pretty cool. It's like just kind of an off-centered MRL, so the actual text there was sort of off-centered, so I thought I'd grab that. I was pretty big into making Amazon S decks as a kid, so I quite like those. We've got some banned Harpy ladies here for pretty obvious reasons. Then we've got Exodia the Forbidden One, the head here. I can't remember which set that's from, but it should be, it's not LOB, so. And a couple of these artworks, I've shown those in shorts, but those are some of the ones I got when I was in England recently. The Japanese artworks, man. This is, to me, like peak Yu-Gi-Oh! I really enjoyed the design that they have. Some of these are also a banned artwork, so that's Science Soldier there. In the Japanese version, he's actually holding a gun, where in the English version, he's holding, like, some science, like clown toy, basically. So it's like, you can tell that they got censored when they came to America, or the rest of the world when they did a lot of these. So these are some LOB cards, some of my favorites. Got that man-eating bug when we were in England last, but just like some classic LOB cards. So I really just wanted to collect as much LOB as I possibly can, of course, but I'm unlimited. Again, this isn't a high priority in my Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff, but I do enjoy it. It's very nostalgic for me. And I think on the back here I've got some One Piece cards too, so we may as well show those off as well. These are all from one specific set, and I actually have a booster box of this set. That was kind of when it was a collectible card game and not an actual TCG. Zoro is my favorite character, so that eventually will be a full couple pages of just all Zoro cards, but again, not extremely high in my priority list, so not going to dive too deep into that. We're going to move on now to my third most favorite way of collecting, which I mentioned earlier, which is, of course, the artworks. So everything you're going to see here is just some of my favorite artworks, maybe some things that go unnoticed. Those 3 common cards there, they have all the 3 legendary birds in the background. And just some of these, like I say, like I like the Execute, the Scraggy. When I pulled that, it's like me and the boys on Halloween, getting our candy type of thing. Like there's just a lot of these type of artworks that I really enjoy. Really like the Flaffy. Those 4 on the end, like the Electrode, and those are very nostalgic for me. I got all of those as a kid. I like the Ditto pretending to be a Pikachu. Some of these artworks, like I say, like the Poochyana is kind of a cute artwork. I like the Geodude just chilling there. And Diglett, this Diglett is by far the best Diglett artwork of all time. Panicking that he's about to get washed away by the water. I'll eventually replace these 3 with the base set cards, but for now I've just got the Pokemon Go versions for the starters. I really like the Ditto from Pokemon 151. And again, these are just kind of random, right? But like the Houndoom, the Girafarig there, those are really like childhood nostalgic to me. Those are all the ones that I had as a kid in my binders growing up. So this is like the 25th anniversary cards and some of the McDonald's cards. I'll probably take those out of this binder and move them to one of my set binders. So we'll kind of just skip over that for now. But a lot of these are just, again, these are all just based on artworks that I really enjoy. These are some of the vintage ones. I love that Dark Doug trio. I just think it's one of his best artworks. And I really like the Trapinch as well. This Feraligatr is, in my opinion, one of the best artworks of all time. I think that's the next graded card I would look to get. I just think it looks so sick. And in Japanese especially, it looks very clean. It obviously has a lot of wear and tear because I traded everything I could for that card when I was a kid, so that one means quite a lot. This is really the generation I really grew up in with the most, like this 2004 era, so I really like the Blazerkins, Skeptile, and Swampert generation of cards. I played Ruby a lot as a kid, so that's probably one of my favorites. Really like the Dark Dragonite there. Those were 2 recent pickups there, the Jinx and the Drowsy. Just like quirky, weird looking artworks that I quite enjoy. So as you can tell, like a lot of these, they're not necessarily holos or anything crazy, and they're all kind of from different sets, but these are just artworks that I think kind of go underappreciated sometimes, and things that I enjoy. Like I really like these Swamperts, and that Marsh Tomp is kind of derpy, but it's a cool looking card from the Crystal Guardians. I really like the Delta species. I was going to put these three in order, but because I have the Cyndaquil, the Quilava, and the Typhlosion, I thought I'd put all three of those together. It looks a bit better. That was actually the starter deck that I got. I got that Typhlosion starter deck for Christmas one year as a kid, back in whatever that would have been, like 2008. So, and this is kind of a hint as to how I collect a lot of my cards. I like to put them in order from the set that you get them from. So I'll probably move this again from this binder. It's just this is temporarily where it is, but Typhlosion is my favorite fire type starter actually. So that's kind of why I collect those, and just some more here on the end of really nice Gardevoir and a banned Jinx card, and I really like this the Feebas and that Alolan Geodude. So nothing too crazy in that. Again, these are just cards that I've found over the years and just thought, yeah, I think it's time to put it in a binder officially. So now we're going to move on to my sets. So this is kind of this is the newest set that I thought I'd start collecting, the Black Star promo cards, the WotC promo cards. It's a cool looking set, and it's a small set as well, but it's actually, there's 2 cards in this set, really 3, that are almost impossible to get. They're extremely exclusive, so this will be one of those sets that will probably elude me for a long time. I really like that Psyduck, probably one of my favorite Psyduck artworks of all time there. Just the big old question mark, confused, and those 3 are I think there's an error actually with those 3 legendary birds there. Got Marill, Smeargle. Really like this Entei. It's, the movie Entei. Very, very nice card. Got a couple of swirls in there as well. But I actually had a decent bit already from that set, so I thought if I was going to collect a new set, it should probably be that. I've got like 28 cards out of the 50 or whatever that's in it. And then this is the Detective Pikachu set. Again, if you're going to start collecting sets, why not start small? Like, this is it's an 18 card set, so it's kind of easy to complete it, and you get the satisfaction of a completed set all in the binder, and it looks quite nice. And this is the Trick or Treat one, so these are just some of the newest ones that I just, while I was opening packs of them, I thought I may as well try and complete the set and make it all look good in a binder all together. And I do enjoy a lot of the Pokemon that are from these sets, so it worked out. But that's just kind of a good example of one way you can collect sets, just purely going off the numbers, right? Just putting it all in order. And then we're going to get into my favorite set of all time next. So this is Fossil. This is the set I've been working on for quite a long time. This is probably my favorite part of my collection here. And this is how I'm going to show you how I collect my sets and really go into how difficult it will be to actually fully complete my complete collection of set collections. So I do the first edition, the unlimited, and the Japanese print. I just think the Japanese print of vintage just hits different with a lot of the time, and the actual artworks are different. I'll show you some examples here later on. But I just think binders really complement a set, especially when you collect it like this, because it's always split up into 3s, right? It's always going to be 9 per page. So you can kind of do it like this and do it in 3 different versions. And then I've got this on the end, right? This is the pre-released first edition version of Aerodactyl. There's 2 prints of that. There's a golden stamp, and then there's the brown stamp. That was the brown stamp, so I need to get that as well. This is by far my favorite page, I think, of all time. You've got Dragonite, you've got the Unlimited, first edition Unlimited, and the Japanese. And you can even tell on this that the Dragonite on the Japanese does look, it's like almost a bit more saturated, right, compared to the English version. And to me, the Japanese card is the original, right? I mean, that's how it was originally designed, and that's the actual name of what the Pokemon is. So to me, it's a bit more, if I was going to choose any language to collect it in other than English, it would have to be Japanese. Now, I'm going to get into how I collect these. So, of course, you're seeing the first edition, the Unlimited, and then the Japanese version of every card in Fossil set, and this is how I do my vintage sets. But the other thing, the other caveat, and this is where my definition of a master set kicks in, is that I also want every single printing possible. That means every error printing that has been recorded, right? So the first one I was talking about was the Aerodactyl, right? The gold stamp versus the brown stamp. The Haunter has something ridiculous, which is like a blue hollow error. I can show an example of that later on, but it's insane. I'll probably never be able to get it. This is, real quick, this is a great example. Look how different the Magneton looks from the Japanese version to the English. I just prefer the Japanese so much more there. It's like darker, it's more profound, it kind of looks a lot more detailed. And so, even same with the Moltres, like the background, like the shimmer looks completely different, and I definitely prefer the actual hollow bleed that they've got in that one. We're going to get into Zapdos. We'll start with Muk and Raichu, of course, but Zapdos is the first one when it comes to the errors. So all 5 cards you're about to see are a completely different print on Zapdos. So this is kind of proving my point of a master set, in my opinion, is getting every single version of every single card that has ever existed and been recorded for a certain set, right? So the first edition has a holographic error on the top left corner. The Unlimited is just the regular fossil printed Unlimited with no error. And then you've got the Japanese version, of course. Looks pretty cool, more yellowy, saturated. This is the hardest card to get, is an Unlimited print of the error on the top left corner. Because every single first edition has that error, but not all the Unlimiteds do, so that was a misprint. And then this is the Cosmo Holo, so that was from the starter deck, right? So you've got 5 different printings of this one card, and not a lot of people even know that that exists, but to me, that is how I would truly collect a set and complete it, right? Getting every single print version of it. Now, this is the last card in the Holos. This is the Fossil Mew, so that never existed for English. It's only the Japanese version, and I kind of like it in the middle. It kind of just, you know, makes it look a bit cooler, so I've just put it there in the middle. There isn't any more left on that end. And then these are going to be the non-Holos, right? You're going to get all the non-Holos and all the old vintage cards. There is no Japanese version of any of these, so it does kind of look a bit bare in the binder because you can only have 2, but this is kind of how I've set up my fossil. The next set I've kind of changed the way that I present it, so I mean, you tell me which one you prefer. I'm kind of back and forth. I like how fossil works, and then the next one's jungle, spoilers, but you know, I'll kind of show you what I mean by that. And then we're going to get into the uncommons, right? So these are going to be uncommons. We're going to get every single card, and it's got to be first edition, unlimited, and Japanese. And again, even on these cards, you can tell that the Japanese card does look a little different. I guess here in the Golem, you know, that one's, the colors are so off on all of these. So, and that's just kind of part of the course with a lot of these vintage sets. That's kind of, there were so many different misprints, and you know, the quality control back then. I mean, the quality control now isn't that good, to be honest, but it was a lot worse back then than it is now. And just look how profound, like, the magma here just looks so much brighter. Like the artwork, the flames, the background, it just looks slightly different. Enough to where it's like, I think the Japanese looks a tiny bit better than the English. But I mean, look, that Seadra looks a completely different color. It's like turquoise compared to like almost like a pale blue, right? So yeah, it's this is how I like to collect. Like this is truly my favorite set of all time. And the reason being is mainly because I got into this a bit later. Like, I wasn't, like, base set's really cool, don't get me wrong, but I had more Fossil and Jungle growing up as a kid because it was the set that came after the fact of base set, and I was a bit too young at the time to have a bunch of base set cards and especially open them, so I never really opened any base set cards when I was a kid. It was just things that I got, you know, through trade. So yeah, so this is definitely a set that I'm really proud of. I've made really good progress on this one. This isn't, I mean, to most people, it's been complete, right? It's been a complete set, but to me, there's still a couple errors here and there that I'm trying to get. Mainly the Aerodactyl one that's got a gold stamp. That's probably the most realistic error I can get. That isn't a ridiculous amount of money. Like that Haunter one is just, I've only ever seen 4 listings on eBay, so a lot of them are going to be extremely difficult to get, but that's okay, because it's as cliche as it sounds, I legitimately really enjoyed the journey over the destination when it comes to collecting cards, and you know, if the harder the journey, the more satisfying the end will be. And that's kind of how I treat a lot of these sets. So we're going to move on to Jungle next. So very similar theme, as you can see. So these are the 2 sets I prioritize. I'm showing these in order of sets that I prioritize. If you collect too many sets at once, like, it starts getting very ADHD. Look at this Jolteon. Look at the difference between the Japanese and the English. I mean, it's like proving my point every time. I mean, it's such a saturated version of Jolteon, but I very much so prefer it. So if you could tell, like on the jungle straight away, I'm obviously putting my cards in order, and I'm putting these on the left-hand side, whereas Fossil, I kind of just did one page worth. So I don't know. I don't know which one I like yet, which one I prefer. I think with Fossil, the reason why I kind of like the way I've set it up is because all the errors can go on the left-hand page if there's an error version of all these cards. In Jungle, there's a very specific error, and I'll actually have it at the very end, and I'll kind of go into detail of that when we get there. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of, like I say, this is how I collect it. A lot of these are, like I say, I prioritize Fossil over Jungle right now, but this is probably my second most completed set, if you will. Because usually when you see them for sale, Fossil and Jungle came out at the same time, so you're going to see most of these put together. So I thought if I was going to collect a set, I may as well collect these two first. And that's kind of what I do it in terms of prioritization. Like I say, I wouldn't necessarily suggest doing what I do. I mean, like I say, it's very ADHD of my collection to do this, but I personally don't mind that. This is kind of what I like to do, so I always keep my eye out for, like I say, for Jungle that I need, and for Fossil. I don't need as many Fossil cards now. It's really just looking for the crazy error cards. But in Jungle, there is less errors. I mean, there isn't as many errors on the actual cards. There's just a universal error, which we'll get to here at the end. And oh, I actually need a first edition Marowak, so that should be pretty easy to get. It's because it's the uncommon version. So yeah, that's it. Like, I'll go through this and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I needed that card. So and you'll notice too that some of these, especially like some of the uncommons, are in kind of not like bad condition, but some of these are like actually from my childhood. And so that's another thing I would suggest you do, kind of like what I was saying with graded cards in terms of, like, oh, look at this Weeping Bill. This is a great example. That's definitely a childhood card. But, like, this is something I would suggest you do. Like, get a heavily played version, or, get if it's an expensive card, then get the lesser versions. And then when you can afford, or when you find a good price on maybe a near mint card, then try and sell your heavily played card, and then use that money towards getting one of the near mint cards. So I always recommend, if you're doing set collection, to complete the set first. Like, get the card, put it in the binder, and then once you've completed it, then start going through and being pickier in terms of, oh yeah, I really want that to be in better condition, and then you start replacing them as you go. Look at that, again, a Sparrow just being the Japanese version, just a bit more saturated than the Unlimited. But again, smaller sets for me, so this is kind of why I started doing these. And so onto the main errors in Jungle. No symbol errors, right? It's kind of spelled out for you there on the Kangaskhan. But these are basically the same Jungle holo as you just saw, but they don't have a symbol on the top right, on the right hand side. So every single holo rare in this set has one. I've actually already gotten, I think that's 7. So 7 out of the 15 or 16 holos that there are. So pretty much halfway there, which is pretty nice. And all of these are things that I've seen just while I've been at a local store, or at a Comic-Con, or a card show. So I've done a pretty good job of finding those, to be honest. But I think if I was going to pick a page that's probably my favorite from this set, once it's complete, it will probably be this one. I'm a big fan of Scyther, Vaporeon, Snorlax. I think that would be probably the best page in Jungle, so that would be nice. So that's Jungle. Like I say, that's second out of my priorities, and then third on my priority list is Neo Discovery. Now, this is definitely my favorite Neo set. You're going to start to notice that a lot of these sets are going to start getting more barren. Obviously, like I say, I've prioritized Fossil over all of what I'm showing, but I've started a lot of these still, just because like I say, if there's a good deal on something, then you can't not get it. This Magnemite is a very important set, and this Poliwrath, very important artworks for me. These are my two favorite artworks for those particular Pokemon. Really like the Tyranitar as well. So you're going to see that a lot of these sets were inspirations for me to do my other ways of collecting, in terms of getting my favorite artworks and collecting my top 10 favorite Pokemon, etc. Just some really cool artworks here. So that was all the holos. I don't have too many. We're now into the non-holos. I got a decent amount of these, and I got some good deals. And a lot of these are near mint. Like, a lot of these are in really good condition. So I was kind of happy about that with this. This was probably the last set that I started collecting. So I was a bit more well known into the ways of collecting. So I'm more looking for near mint cards off the rip on a lot of these, because I'm kind of patient. Like, I have no need to collect this immediately. Really like that Scyther. It's probably one of my favorite Scyther artworks. I've no rush. There's no rush for me. So the longer the better, to be honest. I feel like completing my full set will take my whole life, and that's fine by me, right? Like, this is why I love what I do, and it's super enjoying to and satisfying to when you find the card that you need to put this in the binder, and kind of look back and see where you're at, and obviously when you finished it, you get that much more satisfaction, especially with how I'm doing it, because it's going to, if I want all the error versions and all the different misprints, it's going to take forever to actually get that. And it's one thing saying, oh, it's going to take forever to find it, but it's another thing actually, also having the money to pay for it too when you do find it. So it's always a bit of a caveat there. But that was Neo Discovery. That's my third most favorite set to start collecting. And then we're going to move on to base set. So that's the fourth set that I started collecting. So yeah, ironically, base set you'd think would probably be everyone's favorite, but for me, base set is fourth on my priority list in terms of how I collect. Love this Alakazam. One of my favorite artworks for Alakazam. Really clean Japanese version as well there, by the way. Very near mint. I think I made a video separately on that. That's my childhood Blastoise, so that means a lot to me. That's probably got as much history as the Buster Blader I was talking about earlier. So, oh, hang on a minute there. That shouldn't be there. A non-simple jungle just managed to sneak into my base set. Well, I'll have to go back and do that later on. So I guess I need a Kangaskhan Unlimited for base set. That's funny. Yeah. So how I want to do my base set, and this will take quite a while too, but there's 4 different printings of base set. I don't think I'm going to be bothered to do the 4th print set. A lot of those in the 4th print set will go towards the other ways that I collect cards, so like my top 10 favorite evolutions and all that type of stuff. I will collect the 4th print version of a lot of those if they are in the base set. But for the most part, I think what I'm going to do is do the 1st edition Shadowless, and then I'm going to do the Unlimited base set, and then I'm going to do the Japanese version. I think that's how I'll do it. So you can kind of see I've already started here with the Growlithe, like 1st edition Shadowless, and then the Unlimited. And then I'll eventually do, like I say, I'll start looking for the Japanese base set cards as well. And I think that's how I'll do it with base set. Like I say, it's 4th on my priority list. It's not very a huge priority, but I'm always on the lookout. So if I see something that I'll need, then I can always. I wonder what goes next to Seal. I don't have anything there. So I do it all in order. So it's obviously you can see it's nowhere near as complete as the other ones, but I did manage to get a pretty big collection for at least the Unlimited prints of base set, so I have pretty much all of those already done. And then there's a nice little Nidoran there. Again, just look at the difference between the Japanese and the Unlimited, just a completely different colour. So I really do enjoy that. And yeah, this is, again, not one of my favourite sets, but definitely how I'll do it. The best analogy I can use to how I complete sets is like achievement hunting back in like the Xbox 360 days, or like I guess if you were on PlayStation, like trophy hunting, which I know still exists to this day. But like Gears of War 2 was one of the big games I used to play, or Gears of War in general, and there was an achievement on there that was basically it was called like Grub Killer or Grub Hunter, and you had to kill like 17 million or something stupid amount of enemies, and grubs were just basically the enemies in the game, and you'd have to kill a lot of them, and only 0.02% of people ever even accomplish that goal of getting that achievement. So I kind of treat the errors that I'm trying to get in a lot of these sets as that, where, yeah, everyone's, beaten the game, everyone's got the complete set, but not everyone has the 0.02% error cards, you know what I mean? And that to me is kind of the best analogy I can use to how I complete my sets. Now we're getting into my top 10 favorite evolutions of all time. So of course my favorite Pokemon of all time is Blastoise, and I really like Squirtle, Wartortle, and of course Blastoise as well. So this is kind of my new favorite way of collecting. I'm basically trying to get every artwork from every set for my top 10, well, my favorite evolutionary lines. That's probably the best way to word it. And I already started off with a pretty decent sized collection for Blastoise and Squirtle, and have several different printings, including, I think this will be the 4th print. Yeah, that's 4th print base set. I had the Shadowless, I've got the Japanese, and the base set too. So I've already got quite a decent bit, and then I've just got to sort of fill the blanks. But with a lot of these, again, the binder sort of complements it with, well, evolutions. You're going to have 1, 2, 3. There's going to be 3 in the set. And then sometimes there's going to be like the common, there's going to be the reverse holo, there's going to be, you know, different versions. And so that's why this page on the end will kind of just be like the promo cards. Like there's a promo Blastoise, there's that random Wartortle, there's from, you know, there's the Wartortle from the Southern Islands. There's not a Squirtle in that set, there's not a Blastoise in that set. So like kind of the final page of all of those will just be just the random cards, the random Squirtles, the random Wartortles, the random Blastoises, and that will be the same theme with all of these. So my next favorite, my second favorite Pokemon of all time is Gengar, and I love Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar as a combo too, so this is definitely one of my favorite evolutionary lines, and I do enjoy the way that this presents itself with having all the different printings, and I will eventually put them in order. Right now, I've just kind of put them together in terms of set order. I might do it from, I don't know, like earliest release date to latest release date. I don't know. I've not really figured out how I want to do it yet. But I kind of like it all being all together. You kind of, when you look at it from this perspective, you're like, oh, I didn't know that artwork existed, or I don't know what set that's from, and it kind of does a good job of in terms of displaying it. That's the Shadowless. We've got now into the base set cards. Of course, I really enjoy Sabrina's Gengar, Sabrina's Haunter. I only really had a non-holo print of that. So, and going back to this, of course, like Fossil, there's going to be a whole thing. So I'm going to have to get duplicates of all the Fossil cards I had in my other set in this. So that will be the only downside. But that would probably be the last thing I do when it comes to all of these, especially if I already have the card. One of my favorite Ghastlies there with the reverse foil. I think these are from one of the newer sets, and then obviously we'll need Japanese versions of a lot of these as well. Some Neo cards in there, but just in general, right? Like these, I don't see these artworks that often, and I really enjoy them. That's another thing too. So you see Rocket's Hideout there. If the card that I'm talking about, if the evolution is within the card, so that's not even a Gengar card, but if it's within the card, then that counts to me as being part of this collection, right? So, look, another example here, Gengar's Spirit Link. Well, it's Gengar's in it, so that's going to count towards it. So that's another thing that I'm doing. As long as it's in the artwork, it counts as being part of the collection, even if the name of the actual card isn't what the Pokemon is. So, you know, that's going to come in handy with, like, Brock's training, and, like, you know, there's a couple other things, like some of the, you know, the cards that aren't really specific to a certain Pokemon. And they have it in the background. That's kind of will count towards that. So Larvitar, Pupitar, and Tyranitar, of course. Tyranitar is my third favorite Pokemon of all time, and I actually really enjoy the evolution. Like, I really like Larvitar. Pupitar is kind of hit or miss, but ironically, he has some banger artworks like that one. I really like Dark Pupitar. It looks very clean, and there's a couple more that you kind of go underrated a bit. Larvitar, I think, is obviously really nice. That there's another. This is the other Pupitar I was talking about. I really like this artwork here. You know, and there's a really nice Larvitar. I really like the way that that's drawn. We've got the Neo Discovery, another big inspiration, and I got this Tyranitar EX and this Tyranitar EX last time I was in England, a couple of videos ago. So very nice to add that to the set. This is by far my favorite Larvitar, I would say, of all time. The Delta species, the holo there, looks very clean. And that is that for the first three evolutionary lines. And I like to leave a lot of space because, of course, I'm probably going to eventually, I'm sure there's enough artworks that it's just going to be one binder each, but for now, that's what we're working with, so that's what we're going to have there. So that's the first binder for my Evolutionary line collection, and so next we're going to get into the second. So Alakazam is, I think, my fourth favorite Pokemon now at this point, and I really like Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam together, all three of them. This I picked up recently. Really like this artwork from the newer set. So, you know, obviously before you saw a lot of vintage, like in terms of set collection, and so I know a lot of people that collect more of the modern day cards probably didn't really care too much about that. But I guess the one positive thing about, you know, the Evolutionary lines is that I want every artwork printed of them. So I'm gonna have to have vintage and modern day cards. So you know, that's something that you can obviously kind of respect and keep track with if you're not really into the vintage stuff. And I get it, you know, because obviously if you're a 10-year-old now, then this isn't your vintage. Like this isn't what you consider to be cool. It's not what you're currently collecting. You know, you might be looking at like Burning Shadows as your vintage, right? So then we've got Machamp next. He's definitely one of my favorites. I think he's my 5th favorite Pokemon of all time. Really love Machop, Machoke, and Machamp. I've always loved this 3 Evolutionary line, and they've got some crazy cool artworks. So this is everything I could find that I've personally found over the years, but I know there's a lot more to get, which is exciting. Really like this tag team with Machamp there. We've got the XY evolutions, that should be, and there will obviously be reverse versions of all those, so I just need the reverse for the Machamp there. And then these are when you start getting into some of the cooler, like, older artworks of these, like, just even that one, like Machoke's in the Rain, and I really like these 3 here, you know, kind of an innocent Machop, and he just grows up into just a behemoth, you know. And that's that set that we had the Alakazam, that graded Alakazam from. So there's some cool ones there in this like sort of 2008 era. I've actually recently showed that Machamp as well on one of my shorts, so that's pretty cool. Coming up here, we probably have 2 of my favorite Machokes, I think, of all time. This light Machoke print, I really like this one. It's like trying to show that he's actually just a goofball. There's nothing. He's not just a behemoth of muscle. He's a nice guy. And then you've got the Dark Machoke, right, where it's just like, no, actually, I want to crack this boulder on your head, right? So those are my 2 favorite, I would say, Machokes of all time. Just the 2 complete polar opposites of each other, and just really cool artworks in general. So a lot of these, of course, are the vintage ones. That should be my childhood first edition base set card, and then of course you've got the tops as well. And then this should be that page of just random ones, right? So like we've already seen, I've got the complete version of the Detective Pikachu, so we know there's only one Machamp in there. That was the Squirtle deck. There's only probably going to be a Machop in there, so that's going to just be the page of just all the random ones that don't have sort of the Evolutionary line within the same set, right? Really clean Poliwhirl there. Really like that from 151. So Poliwrath is next, right? Very, very surprising to most people. Like I know Poliwrath does not get a clean rep. Most vendors, if I ever try and sell a Poliwrath card, they kind of look at me like, yeah, no one's gonna buy this, man. So I can't do a deal with you. Even though he's one of my favorites, man. I don't know. I always loved Poliwrath. I always thought when, especially like as the games progressed, when he became more like a fighting type with water type, I just really enjoyed him. I really love that Expedition card too, when he's sort of on the rock chilling, and I think there's like a ho-ho in the background, or the Skyridge one, sorry. I think that was one of my favorite artworks. But I don't know, I just really like this Evolutionary line. I really like Poliwag, Poliwhirl, and Poliwrath. Definitely one of my favorite fighting water type Pokemon growing up as a kid. So we're gonna kind of get these. Seem to be the first edition Shadowless, 4th print. So I've got a decent amount of the base set for him there. And that is the French first edition from those packs that I was talking about, and I've not found that other Poliwag at home yet, but they're all there. And I think I actually recently just got the Poliwag for those 2 there, so that should be complete too. And last but not least, it's Nidoking, and so I thought I'd get Nidoqueen in there as well. I just think Nidoqueen and Nidoking, obviously the king and queen, you know, they kind of pair well with each other. So I think once this is probably the one I've got the least of, but very nice Nidoking break there, and I really love this artwork here for Nidoking, probably one of my favorites. But yeah, I think when this starts to fill up a bit, it's going to look nice with Nidoking and Nidoqueen together, and the 3 evolutionary lines with that. So that's kind of the goal with this part of the collection, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like, again, I'm looking forward to trying to find them, and I think again it will, like, just right there, that's a good example of it complementing it quite well. But this is probably the, you know, I'm not saying like in terms of prioritization this would probably be on the lower end, but now I know that I want to collect it, right? I know kind of what I'm looking for, so that's half the battle. Once you know what you're looking for, then when you are out shopping, you kind of know what to look forward to buy, and you just got to hope that you don't buy a duplicate, but it's not the end of the world if you do. So that's that set. Those are all the evolutionary lines I'm currently collecting, so we're going to move on now to my new favorite. This was the pivot that I talked about in the intro, so this is basically 8 or so, we'll see, I can't remember exactly how many Pokemon, of my favorite artworks of all time. And so basically there's one artwork that I've seen from these type of Pokemon, and I've kind of gone, yeah, now I need every printing of that Pokemon. So Magikarp is the first one. Obviously the Paldea evolved card was a big inspiration, but the Shining Magikarp is really the original inspiration for me as to why this why Magikarp is actually, he's got some really cool artworks, and another example here of artworks that he's just sort of in, but it's not him. Like, that's supposed to be the Maril for the Southern Islands card, but obviously Magikarp is in it, so it will count towards being into this set. There is the Beauty himself, the Magikarp there with the Gyarados on the top right corner. Never forget about that. Crazy cool artwork. Probably shouldn't be worth as much as it is now, but, you know, that's just my opinion. We've got Gyarados next, of course, so this card on the left was the one I was talking about earlier with my Fisherman story. There he is, right? So obviously it's like he was attempting to catch it, but he's in the artwork, so I figured that would maybe, even though Gyarados you probably can't catch on a fishing rod, I figured that would probably count towards that guy's collection. But that's just the throwback to the story there. But yeah, but obviously Gyarados is one of my favorites. That on the top left is my childhood base set card, so some of these will be beaten up. And there's the Giovanni Gyarados as well. So just because I have the graded version doesn't mean that I don't want it in the raw version as well to get into these binders. Now, my Scyther collection's probably the most lacking, to be honest. I couldn't really, but, like, just look at all these. Like, even though you know that these aren't worth anything, like, I mean, you know, but they all look sick. Like, I mean, those two there are probably the worst, like, from the newer set, but they all look so sick, in my opinion. Just the artworks themselves, even though, you know, they're not like chase hits or any crazy pulls, I just think they look so cool. And then Scizor, of course, like, I really loved the steel types growing up as a kid, and Scizor was probably my second favorite. I really like Steelix, and then Scizor was next, but yeah, I mean, I really like these old school art. So I obviously have the Black Star promo. I've put it in here instead of in my Black Star promo set, so I'll have to get 2 of those. I'll have to get another one of those, and then that Sizzle Prime I showed recently. Another surprise to most people, probably, Onyx. Yeah, I know I just said I like Steelix, so it kind of made sense to do Onyx, and I kind of hinted earlier, Brock's training, obviously nothing to do with Onyx, but he's in the artwork. But, like, that is the card, I think, that got me saying, yeah, I gotta collect Onyxes. Like, that card, it looks incredible, and I think he, you know, like, low-key, like, so, like, that one, he looks kind of cute, like, he's, like, trying to just be a little snake, even though we all know he's just a huge creature. He's, like, you know, in a ball and trying to pretend like he's a little pet, but, I mean, he would be terrifying in real life to come across, but yeah, look, there's another example, computer error. He's within the artwork, so he's added to the list, and that counts, and that was another cool little common card that I found. So yeah, so Onyx, and then we go into Steelix as well. Again, just really cool artworks. Really like Radiant Steelix. Even some of these from more of the modern day sets. The V's, the V full arts. I really like the one from Evolutions. And then that is the one. I always love the cards that are with the trainers, and that was the Japanese one. I found that in England recently, and that is the card that made me start collecting Steelixes. It's just a beautiful card. I've made a separate video on that alone, just because I think it's so cool. And then Magmar, easily in my opinion one of the most underrated cards that has insanely cool artworks. Like, that's from a modern. That's just like a regular. That's like a common, I think, and it just looks incredible, right? That V card earlier, that first one, really cool. He's like on the beach chilling. And then, yeah, even all these. Like, we've obviously seen Fossil, some of these are XY evolutions. But another Pokemon I think that just gets, not like a bad rap per se, but just super underrated. I think a lot of his artworks are really cool. And moving on next to Magnemite, I mean... Most people would think, Magnemite, why would you collect Magnemites? Well, you know, the Neo Discovery, I kind of said that was the card that inspired me. I just think that card looks so sick, the Steel type from Neo Discovery, so I'll need to get another one of those to add it on here. But I wasn't wrong. I mean, like, if that artwork's cool, I'm sure some of his other ones are, and these are just some of his common ones from all random sets, and I really like that one. Kind of the goofy one. This was the second reason why I started collecting Magnemites. I really love that artwork from Expedition, I believe it is. And, you know, you can't go wrong with, like, Lieutenant Surge's Magnemite and, you know, even the base set. Kind of some classic ones there. Obviously, some in better conditions than others, but even, like, the modern ones here, they look really cool. Like, I like the shiny one. I really like this one. This is Magnemite leading me probably to my death in a cave. You know, I'm gonna come across a Tyranitar and get destroyed. Magneton, Dark Magneton. This one and the Lieutenant Sarge's Magneton. Those two are my favorite Magneton artworks of all time. Definitely big inspirations as to why I started collecting Magneton. That's a childhood card. I really like that Dark Magneton there as well. Just such a clean artwork for, like, Magneton as well. Obviously not a popular Pokemon, but again, just some really cool artworks from a lesser popular Pokemon for sure. And even some of the new ones. New ones look quite clean as well. Not sure about Sandy Shocks, to be honest. That may leave the collection, but for now we've got it there. I'm kind of going to try and stay true to collecting every version of Magneton, even if it doesn't even say it in the name anymore. We've got Hitmonchan. So, just going to straight up say Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee, two favorites. That was probably the biggest conundrum as a kid when I was playing the game. Which one do I choose? The answer, of course, is to buy 2 copies of the game, because you need to have both. There is no compromise. Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee are two of the best. Or, you know, the reason why you had friends growing up as a kid wasn't to have great memories and cool times and you know, going outside and playing games. It was, hey, can you start a run and trade me your Hitmonchan? Because I want Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan on my run. And that was pretty much it. Chef's kiss on this Hitmonchan EX, one of my favorites. We're going into Hitmonlee now, of course, so yeah, I mean, I really underrated artworks yet again. We're going to just do a little comparison there. Obviously, these are from the same set, and I just think they complement each other so well. I may eventually move some of these around a bit. Like, obviously, these Moonlit ones, they obviously are from the same generation because it's sort of the similar backgrounds there with Hitmonchan. So it may look even a bit better if I put them sort of side by side, because obviously they complement each other very well. And we've got some nice Topps Chrome there on the back end. And then, of course, Fossil, so I'll need all those duplicates again, first edition and the holos and everything like that. And then, of course, we have the very nice Legendary Collection Reverse Foil. Just yet again another chef's kiss to this beautiful Hitmonlee card. So the Hitmonchan EX and that Hitmonlee are definitely the reason why I started collecting those. And of course, they're just some of my 2 favorite fighting type Pokemon of all time, apart from Machamp, of course. We've got Slowpoke. Yeah, probably someone else that you didn't expect. Just has the derpiest, but kind of some of the coolest artworks. Again, very underrated. Just some cool like, I love this one from the modern day. That tag team. Probably the worst tag team if you were in a boss battle, right? But, you know, just cool to look at. And then Raichu as well. I've actually never been a big Pikachu fan, but this card right here is, like, peak childhood for me. This Raichu X was one that I never traded. Always held on to it no matter, you know, how many people wanted to trade it with me. And, of course, that was the German Dark Raichu first edition that I had all the time. And you know, at the time I didn't really even care that it was German. I thought it was a really cool artwork. Driftblim, another good example here of just Lowen Raichu and Raichu in the background of the artwork. So even though it's not a Raichu per se, they're in the background, so it counts. Really cool. Just some regular artworks here, and of course the tag team, another good favorite of mine. I just think the tag teams were pretty solid in general. I think that was a really good set, that Cosmic Eclipse era. So I know they've been kind of making a bit of a comeback recently as well. But that concludes all the binders that I have, my binder collection. So that was all the sets and all the different artworks and different Pokemon I'm currently collecting. I've only been doing at least this way of collecting for this past year. Obviously, I've been doing sets back since 2016. I've been doing it in that form, in that way. But I'm really excited. I really enjoy the way that I'm currently collecting, and it gives me inspiration moving forward when I go to the next card show, or, you know, when I go to a local store that I can try and find something that I really like. So the last thing I'd like to say is, you know, the whole point of this video was really to obviously show my passion for collecting, show what I currently have, and hope that you enjoy, you know, kind of seeing what all I have, but also as sort of like a stepping stone, right, in terms of a progression video, right? So I obviously wanted to do this pretty early on, and I probably won't show my collection again for maybe even, you know, 1 or 2 years, maybe a couple years down the road. We'll do a video very similar to this. It might look a little different, and it might be structured a little different, because who knows by then. But just kind of see where I've progressed, you know, like kind of see where an update on all the binders, if I've finished a couple of the sets by then, kind of where we're at, right? And maybe, given how ADHD my current set is, maybe I'll have different cards and different sets and newer things, you know, who knows, right? So I wanted to kind of treat it as this, and obviously if you are still watching at this point, kudos to you, because I'm pretty sure we're like an hour and a half in. So thank you so much for watching, and of course, you know, like I say, if you're on the fence of whether you want to start collecting, if you're watching this and you're not, you know, huge into Pokemon, but you really like sports, or you really like Yu-Gi-Oh, or whatever it is, you can clearly see that it doesn't really matter what you collect. You can find a passion for it. And of course, my biggest passion is obviously vintage Pokemon, but I'm even starting to adapt and evolve a bit in terms of how I collect, and I'm getting into sports a bit more. I'm getting into, you know, I've always been into Yu-Gi-Oh, but I was always more of a player of Yu-Gi-Oh. I wasn't necessarily a collector, where now I'm not playing as much, so I'm starting to kind of get that nostalgia a bit of some of the old cards I used to play with and decks that I used, etc. So you're going to have that. Your collection will evolve just like you, right? Or just like the Pokemon that you're collecting. There's your little cheesy line. But it's true, right? And I think, you know, again, if you're new to this, or if you're hesitant to it, you can find people such as myself and a lot of the friends that I'm close to that have the same sort of passion as I do, and you can all, you know, get together and appreciate something that, you know, maybe other people won't appreciate that aren't within this hobby. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. I don't want to ramble on too much longer, but just again, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video, whenever that may be and whatever that may be. Hopefully we might be opening some more packs. I might start doing some more things similar to this, like really going into the history of certain cards or certain sets. So who knows, but I will catch you in the next video, and thank you so much again for watching, liking, subscribing, doing all that stuff. It doesn't go unnoticed. I very much so appreciate it, and yeah, I hope you have a really nice day, and I'll see you next time.